Hello, everybody, and welcome to this first edition of Crusades Book I. My name is Richard Walker, and I am the lead designer for this first title in a new series by WDS called Sword and Siege. The games in the Sword and Siege series cover many different campaigns during the medieval period and further back in time. Topics are primarily pre gunpowder or just at the start of the presence of gunpowder units on the battlefield. The game scale is either 40-meter hexes and 10-minute turns or 100-meter hexes and 15-minute turns. Units are normally at the campaign, battery, or squadron level and or battalion level. All the titles in this series include both standalone battles as well as linked campaign games. Editors for both scenarios and campaigns are also included with all the titles. Now, this first title will be covering the Crusades, more specifically the First and Second Crusade, and all the major battles in between. We will start with the Siege of Nicaea in 1097 and finish with the aborted Siege of Damascus in 1148. Subsequent titles will seek to complete the Crusades of the Levant that will eventually conclude with the fall of Acre in 1291. This first video will take you on a tour of the basic user interface. Additional videos will take deeper dives into playing the game and, you guessed it, how to conduct a siege. But before we get to that, let's explore the playing area and toolbar. So follow me. All right, so now we see our first inkling of what the game is actually going to look like. Now, we're not going to actually learn how to play the game in this video here. We're just going to take a look at the various interface tools, like the toolbar, and we're going to take a look at some maps and units and things of that nature. At the top, you'll see that there's various drop downs. The command drop down, for example. One of the things that we're going to learn how to do a little bit later is how to change our sapping units into miners. You can see where you can basically do a lot of the functions of the game without having to push any buttons, and you can just use the drop downs and click if you like. But there's multiple ways that you can function throughout the game. So, and you can see here that there's various things you can do. You can choose sound effects, you can choose music, you can have background sounds, and we're going to demonstrate some of those here shortly. And you can also change the way the units look like, and we're going to take a look at those shortly also. I recommend, by the way, here, if I don't say it later here, is before you start a game, be sure you select Ask Before Advancing. Because if you don't do that and you forget to do something, it's too late. You've already gone past the time that you can actually do it. So if you start a game, make sure you put on the Ask Before Advancing and give it a check mark. Now let's have a look at the basic toolbar. You can see here I'm using the large icons so that you can see them more clearly. These toolbars, if you select all of them, you're going to see quite a few different buttons here. But you can also select individual categories whereby you'll have more control over what you see on your screen at any one time. You have individual unit functions where you can change formations, you can change facings, you can do about faces, you can change units into block, you can initiate charges and things of that nature. And then you go into combat, you can see different things like, for example, the resolve melee. And by the way, if you hover over these buttons here, just as you see a second here, there are also hotkeys. Like, for example, if you want to resolve a melee without having to push any buttons and you just want to use the keyboard, well, you can use Control and then P, and that will resolve your melee. You can go into the reports and take a look and see the victory screen here. This is the one that I like to look at. I like to see if I'm winning or losing. In this particular scenario, this is the get started scenario, by the way, and we'll deal with that here a little bit later and in subsequent videos. But you can see where the Crusaders are now at a major defeat. And the reason why that is, of course, is because they are the attackers. If they want to win, they're going to have to achieve various victory levels. And you can see the victory levels here. To achieve a major victory, they're going to have to accumulate 600 points. There's two main ways of accumulating these points. One is by eliminating enemy units, inflicting casualties and so forth, or by capturing victory hexes. You can see some of these victory hexes are with the flags of the enemy. So if you capture those flags, then you will acquire victory points. For example, if I select on a victory point here, you can see where the victory point here over on this hex here by the hillside is worth 100 points. And you can see that by looking in the lower left in the info box. But before we digress into those various aspects of the game, let's just take another look here at the toolbar. So we have reports. You can also, you can eliminate those flags if you want to, or you can see where they all are. And we can use the map. Again, if you want to eliminate the flags entirely, you can click on this flag button here, and that'll get rid of the flags. You can get rid of the units too, by the way, here. You see it's toggle units. If you just want to survey the map, you can select toggle units, which is also the hotkey of U, and it'll just get rid of all the units on the map. You'll still see where they are by these by these hollowed out squares, but you'll be able to see the terrain underneath them. That's the purpose of that, so you can see what's actually underneath your unit. And then there's the highlights. You can see this is an important one here. For example, the highlighting of the org. That simply means what specific organization is a specific unit attached to. This is important for whether or not you intend to rally the unit if it becomes disrupted, disordered, or routed. And you can see, the organization itself here. You can see what units are spotted, which units have low ammunition, which units are disordered. You'll be able to see detached units, so you don't want to stray too far from your leaders, otherwise you become detached. You'll be able to see what units are fixed, and if I select it right now here, you can see that most of the Islamic units are in fact fixed. This is the get started scenario, so a lot of them aren't going to be totally functional during this. This is just a demonstrative scenario, not really intended to be played to its conclusion. And then you'll also be able to see which units have moved and units which are currently fixed. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you are the various sizes that you can see. Now, we are looking at the graphical units. This is in the zoom out mode. If we scroll in a little tighter, then we'll be able to see more detail, and this is the zoom in mode. Now you can see these are graphical because they are going to show you what kind of units they are, what kind of formations they are in. Probably the Islamic units are a little bit easier to see on this screen here because they have a darker background. They're kind of a light green. And you can see here, for example, this in the upper left-hand corner of the unit where I have my cursor, you'll see where this Islamic unit, and if we look in the info box, we'll see this is a spear unit of the 1st Reserve Militia in the Army of Aleppo, which is a part of the garrison and militia units, and it is in the formation of line. So if you look at the bottom on the info box right here where I'm moving my cursor, you'll see where it's in line formation, and that's also represented by the line kind of going diagonal in the upper left-hand corner. You can also see other units, like if I highlight this Crusading Archer unit, it has a little arrow in the lower left-hand corner, and it represents that it's in column formation. Now, if you're familiar with these games, the movement here is very similar to other games that you have played, especially if you've played the various games in the Musket and Pike series. And they move easier, especially along roads and pathways and things of that nature in column formation. When you get close to the enemy, you want to be in line formation, generally speaking here. But we're going to talk more about those details a little bit later in other videos. Now let's take a look at some of the other maps here. We're going to go into 3D. This is the 3D zoom out mode. And you can see the bases are on the units right now. And if we go a little bit tighter, we can see more detail. You can see the Crusader crosses on a lot of these units, but not all of them. You'll see that a lot of them have different styles of uniforms. Some of them are wearing the exclusive crosses, characteristic of a lot of Crusaders, but a lot of them are carrying the livery flags and uniforms of their specific contingent leader. So all of those clothings and identifying uniforms and so forth here were mixed during the Crusades. There wasn't any specific uniform like you might see in the American Civil War that everybody wore and that was distinguishable from one to another. A lot of times they would just be wearing flags of their contingent leader. But later on, and also throughout the Crusades, there will be different styles of uniforms or clothing, liveries that the uh, units would wear during battle. You can see here that we have the walls and there's gates and walls. You got towers, you got standard walls. We're going to talk all about this in more detail in other videos, so don't think that you have to learn everything in this one video. You can see here we have a siege tower, and over here, it's kind of hidden a little bit by the trench, but this is a battering ram. And over here, you can see that we have some catapults. These are actually mangonel catapults. There's three types of catapults in this game, by the way. There's the manigles, the onagers, and the trebuchets. Trebuchets were mostly a little bit later in the period of the Crusades, so you won't see them in the early scenarios, but later on you'll see plenty of trebuchets. So trust me, they will make their appearance well known. You can see the cavalry facing each other here. The Crusaders about ready to charge the mounted archers of the Seljuk Muslims, or it could be vice versa, however you want to look at it. Perhaps the Muslim mounted archers are going to come in close, fire a volley of arrows, and then retreat, which was a favorite tactic, by the way, of the Seljuk Muslim forces. They like to surround their enemy, pelt them with arrows, and move out of the way because they knew 1 to 1, face to face with these heavy European cavalry, they wouldn't really be able to stand a chance because they were lightly armored, but they were fast and maneuverable, and they can move, fire, and move again to get out of the way. That's a special feature of the new Sword and Siege series. Now let's take a look at a couple of other type of unit displays that you can choose from. So again, this is the graphical. If we go into the settings during the gameplay here, we can go to unit symbols and we can choose NATO symbols. A lot of people like NATO symbols. It's easy to see. You can see the unit representations, obviously because we're dealing with medieval units. We tried to come up with a little flavor that would be representative of medieval times. So you got bows, you got spears represented these different units. And you got the siege engine types, but it's very representative and characteristic of what you might see for NATO symbology. And then also, and finally, if we go to the settings again and change the units one more time, we'll go to what we call the alternative units. This gives you a little more medieval flavor. You can see, like, for example, these archer units, and here we have some axemen carrying their axe. We have the heavy mounted cavalry with their lances in front. Then, of course, you got the battering ram. These folks with the wheelbarrow here, these are the sappers who are going to try to undermine the walls on the various walled enclosures. You can see here we have mounted archers carrying their characteristic recurve bows. And you can actually see the recurve bow a little bit easier on the foot archers, and so on here. So there's a lot of different things that you can choose from when you're playing the game. So we got these various 2D, you can go 2D zoom out, and you can go a little bit further if you want to, where you can see the entirety. And then, of course, if you go back in and you want to go to the jump map, like most of the WDS games that we play, whether it be the American Civil War era or the Musket and Pike Renaissance games, you have the same type of thing where you can go to the jump dialog and the various size of the maps. Now, I'm going to get ready to end this presentation here because I want to save a lot of the rest of the material here for actually playing the game. But I just wanted to introduce you to what the game looks like and some of the functionality of the toolbars. Remember, now you have hotkeys if you want. You can click on buttons if you want to. So there's a lot of different ways of playing the game here. You'll notice that these walls, by the way, are a lot thicker. Now, these walls have some functionality, and the walls and the concept of a siege itself is what really makes the Sword and Siege series stand out. You can go up and down these towers. You can see where they have the fort tower and the interior access. If I were to show you like these gates, for example, here, this is kind of where you can go in and out freely if you are the owning side. But if you are not the owning side, you cannot go in until you actually captured the gate. So there's a lot of different details that I'm going to share with you later on. So stay tuned and be prepared for what's going to be a real eye-opener when it comes to how to play the game and how to conduct a siege. And there's plenty of off-siege battles too, by the way. Not every scenario that you're going to encounter is going to have to be a siege scenario here. I would say that probably half the scenarios have to do with something to do with a siege, and the other half will not have any sieges at all. But there's plenty of material for you to cover. There's lots of different battles. I hope you will enjoy the game. I know you will enjoy the game. So just come back when we publish our next video. In the meantime, thank you again for being a patron of WDS and for purchasing Crusades Book 1. Have a great rest of the day.